The kingdom without peace. In the ancient days, long before the white man's footprint touched the soil of the land, there existed a prosperous kingdom known as Ikoro. It was a land blessed by the gods, rich forests, fertile farmlands, rivers that flowed like silver, and harvests so abundant that even the poorest families ate as kings. At the heart of this flourishing kingdom ruled King Konta, a man of great strength, wisdom, and courage. He was a protector of his people, a man who stood like a wall between Ikoro and its enemies. Though he had once taken 7 wives, only one remained by his side, Adiku, a beautiful woman of calm spirit and gentle grace. Their marriage was not perfect, but she was the last flower left in his garden of queens. For many seasons, peace embraced Ikoro. Until the day war drums thundered from the distant land of Concrete. The wound of darkness. King Konta led his warriors into battle as he had done many times before. The clash was violent, spears shattered, shields cracked, men cried out in rage and agony. But victory was theirs, or so they believed. For in that final moment, as King Konta struck down an enemy chief, a strange weapon, one said to be cursed, slashed across his skin. The wound glowed like burning coal. And from that night forward, sickness crept into his flesh like a hungry spirit. When the king returned to Ikoro, instead of triumphant songs, he was met with fear. The strange disease disfigured him. His skin darkened, his eyes dulled, and his powerful body weakened. Whispers grew like weeds. He has been touched by evil. This sickness is not ordinary. The king is no longer the man he once was. One by one, his people abandoned him. Servants avoided his chamber. His chiefs found excuses not to visit. Even Adiku, his last remaining wife, kept her distance, trembling each time she looked at him. The king's shame. But the greatest wound was not on his flesh, it was in his heart. For at night, when the village slept, men began sneaking into his palace. Not to console him. Not to see their fallen ruler. But to sleep with Adiku, right there in his presence. Helpless on his bed, the king watched in silent agony as his wife gave herself, whether willingly or in despair, to those who came. He tried to raise his voice, but only whispers escaped his lips. He tried to lift his hand, but his strength had left him like a fleeing bird. Tears ran down his face each night, soaking the cold mud beneath him. Thus the great King Konta, once feared across nations, became a broken man, a shadow waiting for death. Because of a bitter heart. On the final morning of his life, the sky darkened with clouds, and the wind carried a strange chill. The chiefs gathered reluctantly, their faces twisted with guilt and fear. With the last of his strength, King Konta sat up. His voice was cracked, but it carried power. A power born from deep betrayal. Ikoro. You abandoned your king in his hour of need. You left me to rot, mocked me, shamed me. You tore my heart apart when I had given you everything. The air trembled. Hear my final words. There shall be no peace in this land again. My spirit will roam. In your farms. On your roads. In your markets. In your homes. And disorder shall reign forever. A sudden thunder struck. The wind howled violently. And with that, King Konta breathed his last. From that moment, Ikoro's peace died with him. The kingdom of shadows. Strange things began to happen. In the farms, men heard voices calling their names even when they were alone. Yams uprooted themselves. Crops withered overnight. On the roads, travelers felt unseen hands grab their ankles. Some were dragged screaming into the forest and never returned. In the market, pots shattered without being touched. Goats ran madly in circles, bleating like possessed spirits. Children refused to sleep at night. Women stopped going to the stream. The entire kingdom lived in fear. The people knew this was not the work of ordinary spirits. It was the curse of King Konta. Yud, the One-Eyed Seer. Desperate, The elders summoned Yud, a feared native doctor from Inu village, a man rumored to speak with the ancestors and walk freely between the living and the dead. Yud arrived with a staff made of bone and eyes that seemed to see beyond the world of men. He entered the shrine and began incantations. Chanting, rattling cowries, and pouring powders into the fire. The flames rose high. The earth shook. The king's spirit roared through the wind. Suddenly Yud's voice changed, deep and terrifying. The king cannot rest. His burial was incomplete. The curse cannot be lifted unless Ikoro pays the price. The elders trembled. What is that price, great one? They asked. Yud turned slowly, his face pale. You must bring 12 virgin heads to bury with the king. Only then will the land know peace again. A wave of horror swept through the crowd. Children screamed. Mothers clutched their daughters. Men argued, fought, and wept. From that moment, Ikoro plunged deeper into chaos. Houses were raided. Families fled. Blood stained the soil. And the spirit of King Konta laughed through the night, feeding on the fear of the people. The land forever cursed. The kingdom that once prospered became a land of terror. The curse lingered in every corner, whispering, haunting, tormenting. Peace never returned. And the story of Ikoro became a warning passed down through generations. Betrayal has a price. And the spirit of a wronged king never sleeps. Years passed, yet the curse of King Konta rested upon Ikoro like a cloak soaked in darkness. No moon seemed bright enough, no sunrise warm enough to melt the fear that lived in every heart. The elders grew old carrying guilt heavy enough to bend a man's spirit. Children were born into a world where laughter felt foreign, and every shadow looked like an omen. But curses, like stories, do not end simply because time has moved. They deepen. They evolve. They reach beyond those who caused them and seek out those who merely inherited the consequences. One night, as harmattan winds swept across the kingdom, something stirred deep beneath the earth, beneath the king's abandoned burial ground. The wind howled like a beast grieving. The trees bent as though bowing to an unseen ruler. And in the darkness, a voice echoed. Ikoro has not paid. The curse had awakened once more. The return of the king's spirit. The first to notice was an old palm wine tapper. Every morning he climbed the same tree, humming softly. But that day, as he tied his rope, a cold hand touched the back of his neck. He froze. Very slowly, he turned. There, perched on the branch above him, sat a figure with eyes like burning charcoal. Its face was half man, half shadow. And though the tapper tried to scream, his voice fled him the way his people once fled their king. By dawn, he was found hanging upside down, drained of blood, his mouth twisted in terror. Word spread. Fear tightened its grip on Ikoro. The prophecy of the burning hills. The elders returned to Yud, the One-Eyed Seer, demanding a new prophecy, anything that would spare what was left of their crumbling kingdom. But this time, Yud refused to enter the shrine. The price we were given, he said, his voice shaking, was not a suggestion, it was the king's final command. The elders' council member, Chief Okpara, stepped forward. We cannot sacrifice virgins. It would destroy us forever. Youth's single eye glowed in the dim firelight. And what do you think is happening now? He whispered. The flames suddenly leapt, rising into the shape of a tall figure, broad shoulders, crooked crown, and a spear dripping with blackened blood. King Konta. The gathered men fell to their knees in terror. From within the flames, the king's voice boomed like thunder across the land. You betrayed me in life. And abandoned me in death. Ikoro shall know torment until my honor is restored. The flames exploded, scattering embers across the shrine. The ground shook. And youth cried out. The king has awakened fully. Children of the dust. That night, all across Ikoro, strange children appeared, pale-skinned, eyeless, crawling out from anthills and termite mounds. They whispered in voices that seemed to rise from graves. Pay the price. Pay the debt. Pay the blood. Mothers fainted. Warriors fled their own shadows. Even the bravest hunters hid indoors, gripping their spears so tightly their palms bled. The kingdom had become a living nightmare. The woman who defied the dead. But from the ashes of despair rose an unlikely figure, Adiko, the king's last wife, the same woman whose fear and weakness once broke the king's heart. Haunted by memories and drowned in guilt, she stepped forward to confront the curse she helped unleash. She gathered herbs. She wore a white wrapper. She walked barefoot into the night, guided only by the trembling flame of a small oil lamp. The elders begged her to stop. The people screamed her name. But she pressed on, toward the old palace ruins where the king had died. There, beneath the broken roof and shattered throne, she knelt. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. Konta. My king. If my sin is the weight that keeps your spirit awake, let my life pay the price. The wind stilled. The shadows circled her. And the king's voice, now softer, drifted like cold mist. Adiko, you broke me. Tears rolled down her face. I know, she whispered. But let this land live again. Take me, and end this. The final bargain. Suddenly the spirits shrieked. The earth split open. Adiko's lamp shattered. From the darkness emerged the shadow of King Konta, towering, wounded, burning with rage and sorrow. He reached for her. But as his hand brushed her skin, something unexpected happened. The flames around him weakened. His eyes softened. His voice cracked, not with anger, but with pain. Adiko, you were the last person I hoped would stay. The kingdom shook as if sharing in his grief. And then, slowly, the king's spirit began to fade. Not from surrender, but from release. Adiko collapsed, unconscious, as the curse lifted from the soil like smoke rising from dying embers. The dawn of new willows. The next morning, birds returned to Ikoro for the first time in years. Rivers flowed clear again. The air smelled of rain and rebirth. Children played without fear. The kingdom was finally free. But the story did not end there. For the people of Ikoro knew that peace restored by sacrifice carries its own kind of haunting beauty. And so the elders engraved one final warning into the stones of the palace. The dead remember. Honor your own. For the spirit of a betrayed king walks faster than justice. And for generations after, no row of Ikoro was ever neglected again.